One foolish politician can spell devastation for the entire world, and we are witnessing that right now. In what some are calling a reckless and dangerous move, former President Donald Trump has announced sweeping new tariffs set to take effect in 2025. The world economy is now holding its breath. Global markets are spiraling, supply chains are unraveling, and fear of a full-scale recession is spreading like wildfire. This is not just about one country raising taxes on imports. This is a battle that could crash economies, destroy jobs, and rewrite the rules of international trade forever. In a dramatic press conference, Donald Trump announced the United States will impose tariffs on over 90 countries, targeting everything from electronics to raw materials. No more. They've ripped us off, he declared, igniting an economic firestorm. Almost instantly, stock markets around the world plummeted. Analysts were caught off guard. Investors scrambled to pull out. By Monday, April 7th, global stock markets recorded their worst day in modern history. Trillions of dollars wiped out in mere hours. The United States imposed a 34% tariff on Chinese imports. China, refusing to be bullied, fired back with a matching 34% tariff on American goods. Trump responded with a threat, an additional 50% if China did not withdraw. Beijing escalated again. By the end of the week, both countries had slapped tariffs exceeding 125% on each other's goods. This was no longer strategy, it was a childish diplomatic showdown, with leaders lobbing threats like teenagers in a shouting match. There was no coordination, no consultation with allies, just raw impulsiveness, fueling a global disaster. A tariff is essentially a tax placed on imported goods. For example, imagine an iPhone that costs $800 United States dollars in America. If India places a 30% tariff on imported phones, the same iPhone would cost 1,040 United States dollars in India. That additional 240 United States dollars goes to the Indian government, not Apple. There are different types of tariffs, such as import taxes, customs duties, and excise duties. Governments typically use tariffs to raise revenue, protect local industries, or exert political pressure. Take South Korea's rice policy as a case study. For decades, South Korea placed high tariffs on imported rice to protect its domestic farmers. Over time, this gave local producers room to grow and innovate. Eventually, South Korean rice became competitive even on the international market, proof that well-planned tariffs can support long-term growth. Let us look at a hypothetical example. Suppose India suddenly imposes a 40% tariff on medicines imported from South Korea. South Korean pharmaceutical companies would lose a major customer almost overnight. But India would suffer too. Medicine prices would rise, shortages might occur, and patients could face dangerous delays. This is how trade wars begin. When one country imposes tariffs, the other retaliates. It becomes a cycle of economic revenge. Retaliatory tariffs lead to higher costs, disrupted supply chains, and inflation. Instead of protecting local economies, these wars often damage both sides and hurt consumers the most. In a world interconnected by trade, diplomacy is not optional, it is essential. Historically, countries have resolved trade disputes through dialogue, mutual concessions, and long-term agreements. But Donald Trump chose a different path. No prior warnings, no diplomatic meetings, just sudden tariff announcements, delivered with arrogance and zero consultation. It was a move that sidelined allies, shocked trade partners, and destabilized international relations. Countries that once trusted the United States as a fair negotiator now view it as an unpredictable aggressor. Donald Trump's justification for this tariff storm rests on one word: deficit. Specifically, the United States trade deficit with China. In simple terms, a trade deficit means the United States imports more from China than it exports to China. But that does not necessarily signal a crisis. It can reflect consumer preferences, global supply chains, or even investment patterns. Despite this, Trump invoked emergency powers, claiming the deficit was a national security threat. Economists across the spectrum disagreed. Using emergency measures to impose economic penalties on allies and competitors alike is not only unprecedented, it is dangerous. Among the countries targeted were the European Union, Cambodia, Vietnam, Taiwan, India, and even close ally Israel. The method behind the madness? A bizarre formula. Deficit divided by total imports from each country equals the tariff rate. For example, in China's case, Trump claimed the formula produced a 67% figure, and that became the tariff. But this approach ignores economic context, services trade, and capital flows. It is like trying to fix a leak by flooding the entire house. In one of the strangest outcomes of the tariff list, the United States imposed tariffs on Heard Island and McDonald Islands, an Australian territory with no permanent human population, only penguins and seals. The move sparked global ridicule. It became a symbol of just how erratic and poorly researched the policy rollout truly was. Memes flooded social media, and late-night talk shows had a field day mocking the absurdity. While it might be easy to laugh at the penguin tariffs, the broader consequences are deadly serious. Global supply chains rely on predictability. Businesses across Asia, Europe, and the Americas depend on stable trade with the United States. When tariffs change overnight, costs soar, contracts fall apart, and companies collapse. This is not just about economics. It is about people's jobs, national budgets, and international peace. Continued disruption could lead to a prolonged global slowdown and permanently damage diplomatic relations. Tariffs are powerful economic tools, but they must be used with care. When used strategically, they can protect vital industries and encourage fair competition. But when weaponized for ego and headlines, they sow chaos. Donald Trump's 2025 tariff offensive has reminded the world that bad policy can create real suffering. As the world watches this unfold, one thing is clear: the global economy needs wisdom, not recklessness. It is time for world leaders to return to the table, not the battlefield,